Hello and welcome to the second lecture on the road to the Civil War, or the sectional crisis. And we left off with the Compromise of 1850, and a major component of the Compromise of 1850, the most important one, is a tougher Fugitive Slave Act that was put in. So this is a law to help capture and return slaves who have run away and escaped to free states. And there'd always been a Fugitive Slave Act before, but it wasn't weakly enforced. And this one makes it much easier for Southerners to recapture their slaves. So if we look at the Fugitive Slave Act, slaves would have no jury trial where they can defend themselves towards a jury. And they would have no right to speak at any sort of trial of, are you a runaway or not? And there's a money incentive to actually capture slaves. If they were found guilty of running away, then the person who helped to capture them would receive $10. If they were not found guilty of running away, then you would receive only $5. But you're putting in that money incentive, so now you're going to have a lot of people out there who are saying, hey, I can earn some money. I can go try to, accuse people, and even if they're, not guilty, you don't really get much of a trial. And so you are going to get cases where people who are free men being sent into slavery. And there's punishment to anybody who helps slaves to escape, any abolitionists or other people who are providing, helping to hide slaves, or giving them shelter, food, or anything as they go, or providing any sorts of assistance. You yourself could be punished for that. And the federal government is going to enforce this, and the southern states are going to make sure that these are enforced. Okay. Now, despise. We'll get a little bit more in a bit about the effect of this in the North. Now, they did counter it. And there are a lot of people helping slaves to escape, especially to escape to Canada, because if you can get to Canada, you're away from this law, or anywhere outside the United States. And some of these slaves who've been captured and put into prison, there was violence to rescue them, and we'll look at one example of that. And many states passed personal liberty laws forbidding imprisonment of captured slaves, guaranteeing a jury trial, and Northern lawyers would delay trials to increase the legal expense for Southern slave owners. So there are people trying to help them out. Now, do you see the irony in all of this? And if you don't, think about it a little bit, because I'm not going to give you the answer, but this is very ironic here. Now, Anthony Burns is a good example of, what this sort of meant. Now, he's an escaped slave. He's a fugitive slave. He's got to Boston. He has escaped to Boston. His owner arrived to reclaim Anthony, and Anthony Burns is arrested, and he's put into prison. Thousands crowded around the jail. Free blacks, white abolitionists, and determined to free Burns. They had a giant wooden beam that they're using as a battering ram to crash open the door. There were shots fired, and somebody was killed in all of this there. The deputies, the police, the sheriffs, they resist. The shots are fired into the crowd, and they fail to free Burns. And the President Pierce was the president at the time. He ordered the Marines to Boston to make sure that the Fugitive Slave Act will be enforced, and that Anthony Burns will be returned to his owner and to the South. And the day that he had to go to the boat to take the voyage back down to the South, 50,000 people gathered on Boston Commons to watch Burns walking in chains to the harbor. And this gets to the crux of the Fugitive Slave Act. It's making Northerners sort of complicit, guilty themselves of the whole issue of slavery, which they never really felt part of. They'd always felt, okay, maybe slavery is evil, but it's not me. I'm not responsible. Now they're starting to feel responsible for people's condition of servitude, that people are in slavery. And it's around this time that Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe is published, and would have a major effect. It's a sentimental novel. It's an emotional novel about a family trying to escape, a mother and her son, I believe. And Uncle Tom, he is sent down south. He is separated from his wife and sent to a very cruel slave master. And it showed slavery as a moral problem, not sort of this political or economic problem. And it, showing the problem that many Northerners just were unaware just how brutal of a system it could be. see no evil, hear no evil, there is no evil, kind of a thing. A single theme in the novel, that slavery is evil and the immorality of slavery. Now, the reaction to it is, it's widely read. It's very, very widely read, both in America and in England as well. And that's quite important when the Civil War comes around, to helping persuade many people in England to support the North in the Civil War. And in the South, they attack it as just drivel and untrue, and that it's just full of stereotypes. Now, there was stereotypes in it, and just lambasting it as an attack on them, and that it's patently untrue. In the North, it really hardens a lot of people to the issue, and makes a lot of people sort of reconsider their position on slavery before, whereas many Northerners are quite indifferent. Now they're starting to not be. And so if you look at the combined effects of Fugitive Slave Act and Uncle Tom's Cabin, both of them are turning a lot of Northerners into abolitionists. And these are people who before would just not care, or would, because of their racism, not want to support freeing of slaves, or just don't really feel that it's their problem, or were not aware of the problem. Now they are much more concerned, and they're much more likely to support abolitionist causes. So abolitionism in the 1830s was seen as very radical, very dangerous, that it's going to cause chaos in society. Now it's become popular, before much more popular. So if we look at the Underground Railroad, there's going to be a lot more support to help slaves to escape. Now, the Underground Railroad it goes back, into antiquity, in terms of the United States' history right from the beginning of slaves trying to escape. But in the 1850s, more and more slaves are making the attempt to escape, and there's more and more people within the North or along the route who are willing to help them. So if we look what it is, it's a nickname. It's not an actual railroad. It's a nickname for the escape routes to freedom, mostly over land, but some by ship. You would try to travel at night. You would follow the North Star, and the North Star is a symbol of your freedom to get to the North. The North Star is also the name of Frederick Douglass's abolitionist publication. And you would receive help from conductors, as they are called, who would help with food and avoid being captured, and showing you the directions and which way to go. People would often have something hanging in their window that it was known that this is saying this is a friendly place, that you can come here for the night, or you can receive some assistance here. Now, if we look at the routes, the most popular was from the deep cotton belt down here. Your route is to go up north, up the Mississippi Valley, and then maybe up the Ohio Valley. Cincinnati was a hotbed of abolitionism, and this is often where the crossing of the river had to take place. Now, that's the last thing. You've got to cross a river, and that's not an easy thing to do. Obviously, there are bridges, but that's where you're going to be caught. So you need to find a way to get across. The other popular route is from the old south of the rice fields of Carolina or the tobacco fields of Virginia, is just to get up through Philadelphia or to New York, and then if you can, up onto Canada, into Montreal or into southern Ontario. Others are escaping into Mexico or out through Florida or by ship. Anthony Burns was one of the ones who got out by ship, but not as many. Now, one of the most famous conductors is Harriet Tubman, an escaped slave herself, and 19 times she traveled into the South to help slaves escape, and she was the most wanted slave. She was the one that the Southern slave owners wanted to capture her. They would punish her by death if they did so. And she escaped slaves traveling by foot at night, and slaves, once they got to the North, they can stay in the North, or if you wish, escape to Canada. Harriet Tubman had been brutally beaten by her master while she was a child and suffered very serious head injury. And to me, she just stands out as a very brave person, and helped a lot of people escape the brutality of slavery. One of my heroes, Harriet Tubman. Okay, so it's within this that we're going to get this. Well, we're going to get an election, and the election of 1852. It's an issueless election. This election, won quite clearly by Democrat Pierce. It was an election of personalities, not of issues, because, hey, slavery got solved, right, with the Compromise of 1850, so that's no longer an issue, and there was no really pressing issues. The issues of expansion, done. The issue of slavery, taken sort of care of, and so it became, an election of personalities. And the Whigs put out war hero Scott. He was one of the leaders in the Mexican War, or the top commander in the Mexican War. And Democrats, Pierce, relative unknown. And Pierce wins, and he's often seen as one of the weaker presidents. Never really did much. But it's within all this that we get the unraveling of it all with this area here. What to do with this area. And Stephen Douglas. So we're going to put the blame on anybody. You could put it on Stephen Douglas, perhaps. You can argue not. Now, Stephen Douglas, the little giant, he's short. He's a champion of the West. He's from Illinois, and he's sort of taking on that Henry Clay's sort of mantle of, promoting Westerners. Now, he's not interested in the issue of slavery. He's really not. He'd been away in England, and what he was concerned is, well, he had ambitions of wealth and power for himself. He wanted to develop this unorganized territory, this area here, which is the last bit from the Louisiana Purchase. He wants to develop it with the railroad from Chicago to San Francisco, and he wants his home city of Chicago to be the eastern end of this railroad that would connect to the Pacific. And with that, Chicago would boost in its value. And he had a lot of property in Chicago that value would increase. He wants to then expand settlers along the railroad, and that would help his own political party, who tended to vote for the Democrats. But he needed Southern support for this plan, and also for future presidential ambitions as well. So he dangled in front of the Southerners a little carrot, and that carrot is the possibility of expanding slavery into this territory. Now, what he argued is that we can have popular sovereignty to decide in this area if slavery could expand or not. Now, under the terms of the Missouri Compromise, this area is closed to slavery. He wants to open it up to slavery. And as he says, let the people decide. And this idea of popular sovereignty, the popular meaning the people, and sovereignty, like the vote, that it's democratic. And it's the American thing to do. Let the people decide. And the idea was quite popular amongst the people. It should be up to us. Now, this would end the Missouri Compromise, and that's going to get a lot of opposition. And it was presumed that one state would be added that would be free, and that another state would be become a slave state, just sort of naturally. And Southerners sort of saw it as that's the deal. So this was put through the Kansas-Nebraska Act. It would repeal the Missouri Compromise, and don't know why I did like that. It would divide Nebraska territory into two regions, and there would be popular sovereignty to decide slave or free state. Now, in terms of Stephen Douglas' motivations, well, we saw he's not interested in the issue of slavery. And to him, as he said, if the people of Kansas want a slaveholding state, let them have it. If they want a free state, they have a right to it. And it's not for the people of Illinois, Missouri, or New York, or Kentucky, blah, 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 to complain whatever the people there decide it to be. So let the people decide. So this is what's happened to that territory, right? There's the old line that slavery could not be above here. Well, that's gone. So Kansas, Nebraska, the people there can make the decision once they apply to Congress to join the Union. They'll join either as a free state or a slave state under whatever decision they've made. Now, to Southerners, it's sort of implied. It's not written in, but it's implied that they would get Kansas as a slave state and 2 more senators coming in from Kansas to support their cause. And in Nebraska would become a free state. Now, for Stephen Douglas, he thinks, who cares which way they come? The people will make the decision. Well, he hasn't really quite figured out that to the people of the North and the South, they do care. They care deeply about this, and they're not going to let this slide. And it's going to cause a lot of anger in the North. And they start to feel that slavery is literally being shoved down their throat. You know, they thought we had a deal, the Missouri Compromise, no slavery into these areas, and now we're getting rid of that. And this is a free soiler, and free soilers representing people who want to open up this area for free settlement of free men without having to compete with slaves and those slave owners and that slaveocracy. And who's holding it down? Well, we've got Cass, who'd lost the election. This is Stephen Douglas here. That's President Pierce there, and they're just holding down and shoving the black man down your throat. And yeah, there's a lot of anger that it's a conspiracy of these slave owners, these evil slave owners, you know, really shoving it down our throat. And it's in this reaction to this that the Republican Party forms, specifically to oppose the expansion of slavery into these territories. Now, who's joining? Northern Whigs, right? Northern Whigs, the Whig Party splits apart. It's no more. Northern Whigs join into the Republican Party. A lot of Democrats do too, and particularly Northern Democrats. Free soilers, and there'd been the Free Soil Party who had advocated free soil, free labor, free men. These are Western-looking people who want to open up the West with free soil for everybody and be a free land. German immigrants definitely also joined into it, and abolitionists join up, and it's one big umbrella where lots of different groups, but they have a common cause, and that common cause is do not allow slavery to expand into these new territories. We're going to pause for a moment as the bell goes. Actually, this would be a good place, I think, to pause altogether. The Republican Party, very much an extension of Whigs. It's a Whiggery. It's got a very Whiggery platform of internal improvements, a railroad to the west, and those economic issues, tariff and the bank as well. All right, we'll stop it there, and next lecture we'll look at what happens in Kansas. Thank you.